Hello, BookTube. I started the day early and eventually ended up at the Brattle Bookshop right as they were opening. For those of you who are new to the channel, the Brattle Bookshop is a used bookstore in downtown Boston. They are great. The store is packed. Every shelf is double stacked with every subject under the sun, all reasonably priced, and with a huge amount of turnover. And in addition to all of that, they have a sale lot outside with thousands more books that aren't organized in any way except by price, $1, $3, and $5. So you can shop a lot at the Brattle without really hitting the ceiling of your book buying budget. I do it all the time. And it was getting on to being hot and humid this morning, but perfectly comfortable by me. And the Brattle was largely still free from thronging crowds of passersby. So I was able to browse to my heart's content. And I found a pile of books, despite the fact that I'm talking all the time here about how much e-reading I'm doing. I found a pile of books. My only defense is the one I always make, which is that shopping at the Brattle is like a wave on the shore. Most of it recedes. It leaves behind little bits and pieces, but very few compared to the volume of the wave itself. So there are a bunch of things here. Who knows how many of them will be here in a year? That's the key is to have the back door open. The key is to keep getting rid of things as well. So I found a bunch of books, and the first one connects with a BookTube event, an inaugural BookTube event that I think is here to stay, June on the Range, which was created by Michael K. Vaughan. I'm one of the co-hosts, where we're celebrating Westerns for the month of June. And I have been inundated with responses about June on the Range, dozens of emails every day from people saying, I never thought to read Westerns, or my father read them, and I never thought they were for me, or my grandfather read them, and I never thought they were for me. And just saying, how grateful people are that they had this attitude change and have added Westerns to the kinds of things they read and sometimes like. That is tremendously gratifying to hear. And I've been reading a lot. I've been reading a Western a day, in addition to all the other stuff that I read. Sifting all over the place. It's a gigantic. Once upon a time was the predominant fiction genre, and there's a gigantic amount of stuff out there. You couldn't read even a fraction of every Western that was printed in the United States if you took a whole lifetime to do it. But I'm interested in. I've read quite a few, and I'm interested in finding authors that I haven't read and giving them a try. I found one today that I've never read before. Frederick Bean, who I guess I found his last book. This is called Lone Wolf. And it has an appreciation of the author, a posthumous appreciation of the author by William Johnstone, who's a Western author that I have seen in bookstores. So I guess this came out in the late 1990s. Maybe this was his last book. It deals with two figures here. With the winter bearing down on Indian territory, two men headed north, bent forward into a howling wind out of the Wichita Mountains. Sam Alt rode a black gelding and carried a lifetime of experience. Leon Dudley, a young deputy U.S. Marshal born in Mississippi, was cutting his teeth in a hard and lawless land. Ahead of them was a bloody mystery, 11 settlers ritually butchered in a place called Antelope Hill. And the people in the vicinity think that it's Comanches. And the older of the two lawmen thinks otherwise, thinks something more sinister going on, which is kind of interesting because it adds an element of a whodunit to a Western. I haven't read many of those so far in June, so I'm going to put this on the pile for June and get to it. June is almost halfway over. Plenty of time left for lots of Westerns. Don't you think, baby? She's a little frazzled with it. It's hot and humid. It's not anywhere near as hot and humid as it's going to get this summer. It's going to be 20 degrees worse Fahrenheit, but it's still pretty impressive. So the baby doesn't handle the heat well, and she doesn't like to admit that. And then this next one I got recently, I found a biography of G.M. Trevelyan, the historian at the Brattle, by David Kennedy, who's a biographer and historian I really like, and I really enjoyed that book. And when I was reading it, I was thinking, well, this is an odd thing to pop up out of nowhere. Maybe other Trevelyan-related books will pop up, even books by him. And I was right. And it's a box set that I found. And box sets are neat because you can put them anywhere, right? They take up space, but they don't take up space in the same way as a book on a shelf. You can just put them anywhere and they'll retain their shape. I found a mass market box set of his book England Under Queen Anne, with 3 volumes that had. I've never seen this before. I've never seen it. It looks like it's organized around two major battles, and peace. But I've read the book. I think I can probably imagine how these are divided, and they come out of the box fairly obediently. The question, I'm pretty rough on books, so box sets tend not to live very long. But the real question here is, will the mass market paperbacks take a read, or will they just fall apart? Because this is probably 70 years old. It's amazing that it's here at all, but through its long journey, wherever it was, passing from hand to hand, it eventually ended up at the Brattle, where it could be found by me. And I not only love this author, but I love Queen Anne. I love that period. I love reading about it. Then this next one is a Dover trade paperback, back from when Dover was a really serious publisher. They did lots and lots of great stuff. Really, they did. Older Dovers are really worth finding. And this is a book I think we've shown on this channel before. I think I've hauled it. I think I sent my last copy away to one of you. It's by George Gissing, the author of New Grub Street and The Odd Women. And it is in the year of the Jubilee, but not the Platinum Jubilee. This is Queen Victoria's 50th anniversary on the throne. And Gissing thought that would be a perfect lens through which to do a little social novel. You know, that it's the Queen's Jubilee and all is beautiful and lovely in London with all kinds of big ticket celebrations. But what about her subjects? How are her subjects getting along? And I remember, I read this last time I got it. It was about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, on this channel. But Gissing can be such an odd writer. When he's on, he's really on. But when he's not on, which happens often, the books are uneven, even inept. And I want to try this one again and see. And, you know, this is in perfect condition. This Dover trade paperback came out in the early 1980s. That was a long time. That's 40 years ago. And it looks perfect. So I grabbed it. It was cheap. All these things were dirt cheap. This next one is a Norton Critical Edition. I love them. They have the text up front and then critical apparatus in the back, including contemporary apparatus. So if the book in question is centuries old, you'll have contemporary reactions to it, if any can be found. And that is fascinating. This is one that I didn't have. I had this once upon a time and got rid of it. This is The Prince by Machiavelli. So there'll be a lot of writing to be done here, not just in modern times, but all throughout. 200 years ago, people were writing book-length essays on this book. This translation is by Robert Adams. I had this once upon a time, but I have a whole shelf of Norton Criticals, and the minute I saw this for $1, I realized I didn't have it, so I grabbed it. Then this next one has a pretty obvious origin of motivation for me. I got the big fat penguin paperback of Dermot McCullough's biography of Thomas Cromwell, which has a blurb by Hilary Mantel saying that we waited 400 years for this book, which is a little bit inaccurate. It implies that Cromwell's never had any great biographies, and he has. He's had a few. But the reason that it has a front cover blurb by Hilary Mantel, of course, is because her 3 novels, Wolf Hall, Bring Up the Bodies, and The Mirror and the Lamp, are all about Thomas Cromwell. He's the main character. And I, last year, found a trade paperback, a Canadian trade paperback of Wolf Hall at the Brattle, with beautiful embossed cover and nice flexible binding and French flaps and deckled edges. And when I got it, I thought, I'm going to read through this really slowly. And I did, and I loved the experience. Absolutely loved it. I joked I told an old friend of mine, I'm reading through this, I'm crawling through it so slow that it's like I'm going at it like I had a traumatic head injury. And my friend sarcastically said, oh, so how many pages a day are you reading? And I said, 20 and 25, something like that. And my friend said, well, that's what most people read a day. So you're saying that everybody has a traumatic head injury. So you can't win for losing with friends like mine. But I loved the experience. And then one of you sent me just recently Bring Up the Bodies in the same Canadian edition. And I thought, okay, well, come the autumn, I will read through this nice and slow, but I couldn't resist. I couldn't wait. So I've been doing that, and it naturally put me in the mood to reread this. So I saw this book, I grabbed it, especially since I wasn't 100% sure that I have the finished hardcover, and I'm still not. I haven't finished looking for it, but I don't think that I do. So it'd be a joy to read this again anyway, because it's wonderfully, wonderfully done, and it's a direct prompt from Bring Up the Bodies. Same thing as this. Because in Bring Up the Bodies, Cromwell digresses. Just he thinks about having read The Prince by Machiavelli and finding it a little ham-handed, a little easy. I thought it was kind of funny. Not so funny the next thing that we're looking at. The Brattle has some supernatural elements attached to it. I always say the Brattle will provide, that somehow the Brattle will know what's missing and will provide it to me in time. But the Brattle also sometimes wants to suggest things to you. There's no getting around that, and you shouldn't resist it. You absolutely shouldn't resist it. And the other day, I found a copy of Jerusalem Delivered by Tasso, Torquato Tasso, Italian Renaissance great poet, troubled man, an insane man, a man who eventually lost his mind, and wrote his great epic poem. Sort of fighting with that illness the whole time and finally succumbing to it at a very young age. I found that old translation of Jerusalem's Delivered, and it went on the shelf. I read a bit of it just to get the old flavor back. And then it went on the shelf with a very new translation, a translation from like 20 years ago that's very, very good, from I think the University of Chicago Press. I still don't have it with me. And I thought, oh, okay, so that's interesting. So the Brattle Fates just wanted me to have another Jerusalem Delivered. And then I found this today. It's a third Jerusalem Delivered. This is another translation by Joseph Tusiani with a Gustave Doré engraving on the cover there. This was in very rough shape. I actually had to save it before I could even hold it up and show it to you. I had to reconstitute the cover and his name because it was all just torn to pieces. But this is a verse translation of the whole of it. It's unabridged. This is a great epic poem about the Crusades. And I saw it and felt a shiver run up my spine early this morning because I thought, okay, the Brattle clearly wants you to have this. You can't ignore it. So I got it, and I guess I'm going to be doing a reread of Jerusalem Delivered, maybe a few different translations. Then this next one is for the floor-to-ceiling bookcase of books about books. I have one of those. It's bookish essays, bookish reviews and prefaces, collections of that sort of thing. And I'm always on the lookout for them. And I found one today that is one of the greatest examples of all of them. It's this. It's An American Procession by Alfred Kazin, which goes from, it's American writers. So it starts with Emerson, goes through Emily Dickinson, Mark Twain, all the way up to Faulkner and Hemingway, Pound and Eliot. It's his essays on those authors. And it's in perfect condition with one of these library plastic Mylar dust jackets on it. So, of course, I grabbed it for $1. Of course I did. It belongs on that shelf. But I'm not going to be able to resist reading bits and pieces of this. In fact, I might just put a bookmark in it and read it from front to back. I might very well do that. Then this next one is a replacement. All of these things were cheap, so I just when I'm shopping at the Brattle and I have store credit or I have cash in my hand, then I will often shop for replacements, things that I like better than the edition that I have. And that was the case with this one. This is John Wheeler Bennett's Biography of King George VI. In this lovely understated red dust jacket, just no folderol, no blurbs, no cover copy, no nothing like that. I have a hardcover of this that isn't really very nice. It looks kind of dumb, kind of pulpy. So I'll replace it with this. I'll take that copy off the Royals shelf of my biography section, transfer any kinds of tipped in articles, transfer all of my handwritten notes, transfer the bookmark, and just put this up there instead. And then get rid of the volume that I have on the shelf. So that's fine by me. Sometimes I will do that. I wonder if you do that. Do you do that? Then this next one is a collection of New Yorker cartoons. I've said many times on this channel I'm a huge devotee of New Yorker cartoons. I love them. Absolutely love them. And I have lots and lots of the big anthologies that go year to year and that sort of thing. But I also love to get collections of individual New Yorker artists. I think a lot of them work really well together, and a lot of times you'll get cartoons that didn't make it into the New Yorker or the Saturday Evening Post or anywhere else. And I found one today by Alan Dunn. This is Should It Gurgle? There's two workers with a pipe. Should it gurgle? And this has a lot of his work for the New Yorker. In fact, I think this volume might be only the New Yorker. But his stuff. Let me show an example of his stuff is strange and won't always make sense to a modern audience. There are lots of historical references that you won't get unless you know the time period. Like, for instance, this one from 1951. I'd be willing to bet that someone in 2022 will not get the joke. You sort of had to be there. But there are some others that are more general. Let me see if I can find an example of that. I mean, some of them are just commentaries on the time, like this. How weird it would be if you're in a modern Art Deco house and one whole wall is a window, and you're going to be able to see the carolers, and they're going to be able to just look in and see you. Some of them are things like that. But, yeah, here we go. Like, for instance, this. There you have people coming to their summer house. And they're coming in the front door, and all the animals that were living in there during the winter are leaving out here. Now, that doesn't have a caption. That's just the visual image of it. And it loses a little bit of impact now because the adjusted for inflation, the median income for an American family in 2022 is enormously lower than what it was in 1953. Half of what it was in 1953. So most American families don't have vacation houses out in the woods or anything like that. But there's also, sometimes he was really good with the caption. He did his own captions, which New Yorker cartoonists in these times sometimes didn't. You've got a police car just rolling up on these guys as they're robbing the store. They're walking out with the safe. And the caption is, well, we'll just have to brazen it out. And this has an introduction by Walcott Gibbs, who was a fixture at the New Yorker. It'll go, I have a whole shelf of these kinds of things. It'll go just fine. But first, I'll spend a nice half hour thumbing through here. And then the final thing that I got is art as well. It's a 60-year retrospective of one of my favorite painters, Norman Rockwell. It's a thin thing. It's not there's a platonic classic Rockwell book that I have never seen that I really want. I don't know that it's ever been made. This will do just fine until then. Because this is a retrospective of all of his art. So taking you through the very early years when he was, doing stuff for the Saturday Evening Post and whatnot, and to the times later on when he was an institution. When you've got lots and lots of text, but you've got all of these famous paintings and lots of full-page reproductions, and this volume also wonderfully has fold-out for the murals that he did, for the really big paintings that he did. You get fold-outs of a lot of those that go throughout here so that you can really look at the detail that's going on. And in addition to that, another thing that's really neat about this volume is that it has a lot of the stuff that he did at the beginning of his career for Massachusetts Insurance Company. That let me see if I can find an example of those. Those often don't appear in Rockwell books. You'll always get stuff like this, right? But you often won't get the journeyman work that he did at the beginning of his career, and this book has it. See, he did little sketches like this. They're nothing to write home about, but they do show you what he was doing. This was for Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company, and this book has a bunch of that stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that you wouldn't see in a typical, much bigger Norman Rockwell retrospective. So I grabbed it. I'm always up for more Rockwell, especially if the book has text, so I can read either someone's appreciation or someone's history. I'm always up for that sort of thing, so I grabbed it. And once again, these were all cheap. So that is it. That is my Monday Brattle haul. It was hot and sticky. This is Norman Rockwell, a 60-year retrospective. Should It Gurgle, a collection of Alan Dunn. I don't know if this is his only collection. It might be. Then we have a biography of King George VI that will just replace the one that I have on the shelf. We have An American Procession by Alfred Kazin, just about the best shape edition I could ask for. We have yet another translation of Jerusalem Delivered. This one in a hardcover that I had to rescue, but still. We have the Norton Critical Edition of The Prince. We have the paperback of Dermot McCullough's biography of Thomas Cromwell. Strongly recommend it. I recommend anything this author writes. We have In the Year of the Jubilee by George Gissing in an old Dover paperback. Don't know that anyone else has ever done this. I don't think Penguin ever printed a copy of In the Year of the Jubilee. I don't think Oxford ever did. You have to go to Dover for a lot of these things. Then a box set of England Under Queen Anne by G.M. Trevelyan, which was kind of a find. I'm not sure how readable it is. The text is readable. The book's lovely. But I don't know how much punishment those mass markets will take. And finally, Lone Wolf by Frederick Bean, a Western author who apparently went out with the spurs on. We'll have to see. I'll have to, Google him and research and see what his life was like. Was he another one of these hyper prolific Western authors, or was he picky about it? We shall see. But that was my Brattle trip for today. Sorry for the enormous amount of background noise. But I'm going to wrap this up and see what's going on in the neighborhood. It sounds like someone is landing a helicopter in my parking lot. So I'm just going to go and see. Sorry for all of that. I'm not going to remake this video for a 5th time. I live in a war zone. That's the only way I can put it. So it's a miracle that I can be heard over the background noise ever under any circumstances whatsoever. But I think this went fairly well. So that was my Brattle trip for today. Quite a few of these may be keepers. The Alfred Kazan certainly is. Quite a few of them may be keepers, and quite a few may, in part or in whole, shove aside other things and get on the reading list for tonight. We shall see. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.